Welcome to the Authors Hour. My name is Fred Zerum, and I represent the Friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center. We are a volunteer organization whose mission is to promote writers and writing on the institution grounds, and we even hope beyond, by both supporting and supplementing the activities of the Chautauqua Institution Writers Center. We sponsor several events every week. On most Sundays at 5 in the Pros Room on the second floor of the building, writers and listeners 18 years old and above are invited to participate in an open mic session. Unfortunately, the last open mic was last Sunday, but please keep this in mind for next summer. These announcements will be filled with that since it is late October. No, I'm sorry. It's late August. This Friday at 1:15, we do have our final activity. It's an informal critique in the garden room on the first floor of this building. Bring 10 copies of one page of poetry or prose, and an often published writer, John Brantingham, who also teaches at the Official Writers Center, will guide a feedback session. And every week on Tuesdays, we present the Authors Hour. This is our last but not least of that series. At halftime, I'll tell you about some special events, annual special events. Most of them are history as well, but just for future reference. At the end of the readings, books will be for sale, and right before the books go for sale and signing, we'll have time for a short Q&A, so think about any questions you might have for our two authors. Our first author is Lennie Hay. She's a 2019 MFA graduate of Spalding University. She grew up in the Midwest between two cultures, Chinese immigrants and German Ukrainian farmers. A very interesting. A former educator, she lived in Louisville for nearly 50 years and now lives in southern Indiana and in Florida, drawing energy from visual art for family history, music, and water last week, right? Her work has been published in various journals such as Roundtable Literary Journal, Heartland Review, Shanghai Literary Review, Literary Accents, the Louisville Review, and others, as well as in an anthology, Boom. Her debut poetry collection, Lost in America, was published by Broadstone Books in May. Let's give a warm welcome, because we need some warmth here.
Thank you, Fred, and the writers that are here. I'm thrilled and honored to be sharing my work with you today. And thanks for braving the chill. You're probably like me, I didn't bring my down jacket.
Right.
It's nippy. In other readings, people have suggested, and you probably can't see this, but on the cover of the book, a young woman designed it with me. There is a mountain that's gold. And I like to start there because the book is not exclusively, but largely about my family story and my story of having mixed identity in the middle of the last century in the Midwest. The Gold Mountain symbolized, if you're not familiar with that phrase, coming to the America for the Chinese, and most came from South China at the time, my grandfather, and then later my father. So I'm going to start with a poem from the first section I call Origins, and it's called Sounds of an American Family. I was born howling, Chinese American daughter in the middle of North Dakota. Gross fodder stories of the Depression, Russian thistles ground for cattle feed, rustled in my child brain. Restaurant plates tapped like a tabletop. Mahjong tiles tumbled free, clicked at midnight. Mother's night worries of loss. Combines rattled across wheat fields. German conversation floated through my summers, tangled with incomprehensible Cantonese. I slammed doors, smashed baseballs, skipped my way to the library, sang Gregorian chant. Corks popped, home-brewed dandelion wine, peppermint schnapps. We learned what matters. Daughters with long hair, avoidance of Japanese devils, excellence in school, generosity, homemade sauerkraut, Chinese roast duck, pride in hard work. His life before America was unimportant, no question. A long stillness around her growing up here. We reveled in Daddy's friends. They were all uncles, bursting with short laughs, whiskey splashes, near kitchen counters, a giant walk. My sister played a Chopin etude on our Wurlitzer spinet, a duet with mom's whirring singer, sewing into the night. Dad's newspapers rustled, one English, one Chinese. Radio announcers called Friday night fights. When he died, a white velvet veil draped our house, muffled our mourning. I learned silence. The next poem is Below the Surface. Daddy and I go underground, descend steep wooden steps to find the cellar below our restaurant. He finds respite from the heat of labor in a quiet hour before the dinner rush. I tag along. We sit across from one another on low stools, heavy metal container between us, full to the brim with sloshing water and raw potatoes. We peel. Golden skins fall into the water while we talk baseball. He knows all things about this American game I'm learning. I try to stump him with my card. Mantle, DiMaggio, National League, RBI, American League, batting averages. He doesn't miss any. Let's fly back, learned with his father in Montana, where Chinese men lived underground, in Cowbell, Butte, Billings. They shuffled below the city streets, from dreams to work, stayed out of sight, followed the rules until they ascended narrow morning stairs to serve in noodle shops, laundry, dry goods stores, enterprises owned by countrymen, my grandfather and others. A rabbit warren under America held men who answered the call of the Gold Mountains, labored, lived lonely, sent money home, learned his country from underground. Their sacrifices are not the stories Daddy tosses across potato water. He looks beyond, kitchen above, past below. We claim a middle ground, talk baseball in a new world. Next poem I'll read is an example. I had to do a lot of family research, and it was challenging because I don't know the language of Chinese. The other side of the family is easier. And some of the poems I have are based on family mythology. So I try to fill in the blanks based on what I was told. This one's Saving Face. Did she sob in the rice field as her second son, Zhong Lin, my father, walked away to follow father to the Gold Mountain? How did grandmother Zhong make a woman's life deserted, one of many in her village? Face an empty bed, tend to crops, water buffalo, pigs. Did she dream of their return? At midnight, see them walk a road back to her, desolate at dawn when the rooster woke her. Did choice ever cross her doorway? When the government came for her land, 1,000-year home, same year I was born, torn knees and hands made a blood trail when she climbed the stone wall of the family well. She chose to cleanse her shame deep in cold water. Some of you may know the title Saving Face in Chinese culture. Saving face, protecting honor, protecting sometimes your role in the social hierarchy. Honor for the family and herself are very important, and that's where that title came from. This other one goes back to North Dakota. Women's Harvest. Barbara, Eva, Elizabeth Ann sprout blisters. 3 sisters pull needles, North Dakota wheat from their palms. They shock it, make the bundles lean one against the other, construct North Dakota pyramids on the plains. Later, young brothers would help, but in early days, only girls dripped sweat and blood on the harvest. Stir huge pots bubbling inside cook cars. Arms ache, burn weary. Grandpa moved men, machinery, his daughters, from farm to farm, threshing the prairie's treasure. Elizabeth Ann, Eva, and Barbara knew obedience by day, bitterness by night, too little sleep, sore back, relentless wounds, rabid dogs, and men. The next one I'll read out is Minnesota Waters. It's a love song to my sister, who passed a few years ago. Minnesota Waters. It's a little bit longer, and I will say that the structure is I move back and forth in time, stanza by stanza, present to past, present to past. I walk Minneapolis trails, cross 2 bridges spanning the Mississippi River. My sister sprinted by Itasca Lodge. We raced to the river's headwaters, step rock, balance, step rock. Under St. Anthony Bridge, mighty river churns, brown spring water, pulses through neat arteries. She drove us to Maple Lake, weekend cottages, dreamy boys in speedboats. I wanted her pink, lacy swimsuit. Red and blue sculpture erupts from the ground. I walk around the beautiful wound on Minneapolis's skin. Children filed into the vestibule, dipped fingers in a cold marble font, She crossed herself with holy water. I did too. 13 black granite columns line the banks where I walk. 13 people drowned when a bridge collapsed. We shoveled horseshoe slough to skate, raced the boys before frigid air slowed us, held up by strong waters. My sister needs care to move from wheelchair to bed. Remember the day when she gets a bath, ages of her children. We crossed the gurgling source, 10 feet wide bracelets of stone, painted dark by chilly waters. She crossed first. I followed her everywhere. We crossed the street to the park. I follow her electric wheelchair. Land of 10,000 lakes, she laughed at my belief in big numbers, Paul Bunyan and his blue ox. A pink plastic mug with fitted top secure in her hand. She drinks cold water, winter and summer. We watch birds drink from a puddle, laugh at their antics, gasp when they swoop near us. She drops her cup, and I retrieve it. She spills her water. I wipe her hands. Rocky streams, rivers frozen early, lakes tangled green, freshness of grateful youth, blessed pools. As I said, not all the poems are family poems, but the last section, which is called Beyond the Gold Mountain, is really about aging, facing mortality, and the death of people around us. And this poem is in the form of a villanelle. Sometimes I use formal structure, not always. This is at the green easel. She paints her way through days of greatly tangles, faces a tilted view from a crooked porch angle. I knelt beside her on sand where his body lay. Hidden behind green branches, near a hungry gulf, she speaks slow words about the water's incessant pulse. She paints her way through greatly tangles. I sit near and hear of his 40-year touch. She paints herself Gulf blue, beach brown, olive blush. I knelt where his body lay. 4 o'clock waves flung him hard and low beneath her unfinished painting. He drowned 2 years ago. She paints her way through greatly tangled. Beyond her watch, her artist's hands, the surf bloomed. She knocked over canvas and easel, ran into the blue. I knelt beside her on the sand where his body lay. Spears of green leaves frame her mourning, circle the cottage, block surf spray and neighbors. She paints her way through days of greatly tangled. I knelt beside her on rough sand where his body lay. The next poem is also from the beginning section called Origins, and how my father changed northern Minnesota. Not a doctor, shoulder slung, stethoscope ready, bedside with an old woman he recently sliced open, but a sculptor wielding cleaver on a struck open duck, relieved of its briny brown juices. Not a mathematician in search of patterns, elusive solutions scrawled in passion on lined graph paper. He was a sorcerer, mixing ginger and jasmine potions, stirring garlic and scallion along a wash curve. He did not import rosewood chairs, mother of pearl screens, jade bracelets, or silk dresses, though he ordered squid and seaweed, bird's nests, preserved eggs, lychee nuts, shipped by way of California to share with Minnesota friends, farmers, photographers, small town bankers. They inhaled smells of distant burns, tasted South China's ancient cliffs, foreign topography and texture in the heart of the Red River Valley. This next one, is really no single experience, but kind of a composite, and addresses those stereotypes my father confronted and that I did from time to time. It's called American Politeness. May I ask a personal question, they say? I am weary of strangers' assumed right to know me. My weight, religious preference, sexual orientation? I chuckle silently, weighing an answer this time. Raised docile, I smiled, yes. Where are you from? Always the follow-up. Their false politeness prompts my answers, meant to confuse. My not. Crookston, Minneapolis, then Kentucky, where I was born, grew up, got educated, and learned how fellow citizens position me outside their landscape. Pin me on a map in a foreign place for those who have silky black hair, pale skin, eyes like mine. I prolong my naivete. My interrogators squirm in confusion and discomfort. They hope that people who look like me took a boat here or flew, adopted, to the land of the free. I acquiesce as if I did not speak their language. Oh, you mean, what is my ethnicity? My father immigrated from China. My mother was the daughter of German, Ukrainian immigrants. I was born on the plains of North Dakota, near wheat fields and under endless skies. I hope they feel my words like a slammed door, like a gut punch. This last one, another about aging, called Original Sins and Recent Blemishes. The southwest corner of the bathroom mirror reveals a black blob, same shape as Cuba. Then all manner of places stare back, facial topography. A Galapagos nose hair hangs, clings to the Isle of Ferdinand. The pores of St. Croix dot, hill and vale, circle a nose. A burnished macaw mole here, Taipei freckle there. Once familiar forehead, now grooved by narrow land masses. Caladisi, Whedon, and Longboat Keys. Brown liver spots multiply. Skinny tracks, years of plowed furrows. Pores emerge. Damnable hag hairs. I switch off the light, slam the door.
Thank you for, in a way, Lennie, giving a new meaning to poetry slam.
Yeah.
Okay. And thank you for giving voice to cultures, at least, and family and personal journey. All right. At this point in the season, as I said, most things are in the rearview mirror, but I did want to just recount what either you experienced or you missed this season, and hope you can remember to include these events on your calendar next year. In early July, we had a reception with friends on this porch with light refreshments and lively conversation. In mid-July on Dexter Plaza, we had the Authors Among Us book fair for Chautauquan authors. So if you're around, keep that in mind, or anyone out there that has a book. In late July, the writing contest for writers of all ages closed, and on August 11th, so not quite mid-August, we had the awards ceremony. Early August, in between those two, was the Favorite Poem Project. Sorry, I almost forgot that. Started by Robert Pinsky, where selected Chautauquans got to read their favorite poem by someone else, not themselves, okay? And briefly explain why it means so much to them. If you want to find out more about those events, you can still go on our webpage at chq.org/FCWC for Friends of the Chicago Writers Center. There may have been something I've forgotten, but you can anticipate next year and maybe include some of these events. And just another reminder, there'll be a short Q&A period after our next reader, who is David Walsh. He grew up in rural upstate New York and spent his career working for local and state government. His interests include history, the impact of technology on society, and baseball. So you'd have something to talk about. Okay? He was greatly influenced by poetry workshops held at the Chautauqua Institution and by work done with his weekly writers group. His poetry has appeared in Spitball, 9, Museum of Americana, Ivan Today, Adirondack Review, From Whispers to Roars, and The Twin Bill, among others. David and his wife Pam live in the capital region of New York. David Walsh.
Thank you very much, Fred. Fred has been very important to this whole process. For those of you who know him, one of the things that we were chatting about before we started here was how good he is at communication. We knew exactly when things were going to happen here and what time and all the requirements. And Fred, thank you for all you do for this program. So I'd like to just dive right in and start out with 2 poems that deal with the initial threads that we all start to build and start connecting when we're young, and primarily when we're children. The first poem is called Neighborhood Voices. I grew up next to a cemetery, played baseball in an empty field with headstones, a short home run to right, left field not yet occupied. We feared voices from moonlit stones, yet dared to shelter ourselves in sleeping bags near Pitcher's Mound, teens blowing cigarettes at stars. Our village history was a timeline, dated stones running up a cemetery hill in reverse order to 10 generations, hard facts of birth and death. We collected stories from intricate scrolled verse, epitaphs on the bottom of the oldest lives before the granite crumbled and forgot. My father's grave stands in full view of the deck of my mother's house. His voice echoes in who I am, even as distance and time grow deeper. I search voices of neighbors in that field. I do not wait until my dates are etched upon a stone, listening for the feet of a wary child chasing a ball. The second poem also deals with some childhood memories, but it got kicked off here in Chautauqua when one of our teachers presented an exercise for us. She passed out a number of sheet with a number of things that are, what should we call them? They're fears or apprehensions that we may all carry. Fear of snakes, fear of thunderstorms. I picked one called Fear of Trains, something I had never heard of before. So the name of the poem is The Zero-Dramaphobia. The signal bell is distant and insistent. A horn hollers, my heartbeat jumps as the moan drones across the valley, and I reach the creek bridge, narrow, railed in, nowhere to edge walk. I know traffic is lined up behind the barrier on Albany Street, some kid in a back seat ready to count the number of engines. I'm more concerned about escape. 30 feet down is not an option. I reach the rotted tie at the 50-yard line. Gap between blackened boards gape under my panicked stride. Warm goop hold back my sneakers with every frantic footfall. Cinders splash when I hurl myself sideways into leggy weed, just ahead of the rush of metal wheels and diesel smoke. When I reach home, Mom's scream echoes the whistle, reminding me why I can't take the shortcut home. This next one deals with the trauma that, the world went through when a pandemic hit. And there are many different consequences to this, of course. But the ones that I was struck by were the little changes, the little things. This poem's called Finding Normal. So far today, I found grape stems left on the table next to the rocking chair, candy wrapper next to the 2-week-old puzzle, the attic light left on from last night's excursion in search of a forgotten photo album. I loaded the washing machine with clothes, then failed to hit the start button. Neither one of us own up to the food leftovers. We can't agree whether the pictures already made it as a slideshow on one of our computers, nor why we even crave the memory. The laundry can wait. These walls may contain 2,100 square feet, yet we sense the squeeze as if we inhabit a remote cabin with 2 small rooms, 1 cot, no exit door, a pantry shelf sparse on food and stocked with alcohol. None of it insists with mental acuity. A pandemic creates a moat around our lives. The drawbridge is lowered only for visits with toddler grandkids who otherwise grow in miniature on a smartphone while we share stories on FaceTime. We double mask in the Target parking lot when we tire of watching Jeopardy from the same sunken space on couches across from each other. Suburban box stores substitute as tourism for bored COVID claustrophobics. So Lennie raised baseball, so I had to come up with one of them. I find that is one thing I do fall back on once in a while. And this is one I wrote soon after the pandemic started. My wife and my daughter and I were shopping in an outlet mall in Massachusetts, And the outlet mall, this is March of 2020, the outlet mall started typing the news over their sound system. And the first two things that came over the sound system at that point when we were walking around were the NBA had shut down and Major League Baseball had closed their spring training camps. So this was my result. Baseball in the time of Corona, April 2020. The radio is no longer useful. They took our ball away, shut down the airwaves. We used to hear warm welcomes to a summer evening in the park, the background murmur of a few thousand voices, stories of people shuffling sideways down an aisle to the middle seats, balancing a couple of beers. We could even hear the pop of the ball in the glove in the bullpen, while the voice listed the pitchers for the night. It's all a hum of humanity surrounding green space, players in weird attire and hats ready to work into bursts of energy, action and reaction, bat the ball, foot race. Instead, home is sacred and untouched. These feet that ramp up and up are subdued, reduced to empty plastic. The map of 3 and 2 or 6 to 4 to 3 is suspended due to invisible multiplication, graph curves that don't flatten, R1 values of human contact, supply of PPE and ventilators. The comfort of batting average, ERA, strikeouts becomes rates of infection, intubation, death. Social distancing is a different scale on a baseball field. The community no longer congregates. Any distance inside 6 feet is stricken territory. A sneeze can't travel 60 feet and 6 inches, but it could strike the guy in seat 45 deep. So I went through a phase that my writers group accused me of at one point of doing too many nature poems. And yet in my own mind, nature is just one more thread that we connect with. Probably the most important that we do connect with. So I have a series of nature poems here, and I'll just read one of them. And this one's called Doctors. September skies carry the most drama. Clouds dance with the river. Slanted light split the mist to spotlight new colors of the forest. A flicker of orange and red, the tip of a brush painting the edge of fall. I wish the green would return when the endless landscape of hills has no break. September means I need a hat to protect white hair. The heat that used to ease my creaky bones fades into cooler nights. Daylight does not linger, and my fear of dark hours follows. The colors disappear before I can measure. The rotation of the earth only means the pages on my wall are flipped again. They're little boxes filled with haircuts, birthdays, funerals, and doctors who listen to my lament of age, but who don't look out their windows to wonder when the leaves fell off and the sky went muted blue. One of the greatest lessons I think I learned here at one of the sessions, let me find the page right here, was some of the Japanese forms that I wasn't familiar with. Naturally, most poets know haiku, but I had never heard of a haibun. And a haibun, is a poem with 3 parts, really. It starts with a title, then it has a prose poem, and it finishes with a haiku. They are all supposed to connect interconnect in some way without repeating each other. And it's a tricky little form. But one of the first ones I wrote is this one, and it's called Daylilies. Daylilies. Lily bulbs dig in across the battlefield. Some with disciplined order in regimented gardens, others littered into small brigades and protected hedgerows and ditches. Platoons of Rhotidia lilies hunker down among daffodils and tall grasses, which help them lay unseen in the ditches. Squads wearing orange heads pop up with the early sun and defend all the flanks in well-ordered trenches. Militia squads clean their floral barrels in the early breeze. Finally, hundreds of open orange faces have taken full control. Their pistols aim straight as they track the rays across the sky into the long afternoon. But the night brings darkness and the loss of firepower from weak moonlight. The battlefield loses its colors. In the haiku in this one, D-Day, off with their heads. This one really isn't in one of my books. Or I suppose I'm cheating a little bit, but this one was written probably about a few months ago. And, I've got the wrong one. Well, I'll read the one I brought. This one is called Road Grace. I ran the stoplight and felt chased, since bad consequences are the domain of better angels who fend off evil counterparts to squash my guilt. I claim divine intervention via prayer, if talking aloud behind the wheel is considered conversation with a God who protects me from bent metal. Rules of the road are daily broken, but I grade myself on a curve based on some sense of ethical behavior gleaned from my upbringing. God may not care about my drifting attention in the shadow of a traffic light, so long as I mutter the Beatitudes while ignoring the eternal grace of green. How am I doing? All right. So we'll do another high balloon. This one is called Lost Souls. And it has a little bit of guilt and pathos built in. Lost Souls. She knocks at 4 a.m. I open the door. Her look says she is hoping for someone else. A short coat covers a thin casual dress in early December air. Shivering, she says her name is Tony, looking for Mike. Her tone and the tentative catch in her voice implies that even she doubts the name. Her slur and shaky balance reveals alcohol has been a poor mapping aid. Our street name means nothing to her. The neighborhood is foreign land. Conversation trails off in the cold. When it becomes clear she is in the wrong place, she walks away. Our car is around the corner. I see and hear nothing. And the haiku, solace can fail at dark hours. Silence is no savior. Maybe I'll finish with this one. This one's called Fan. When it's midnight or 1 o'clock and you still haven't fallen asleep and it's dead summer and it's very hot, like some of the days here 2 weeks ago, right? And you have fans going in your house, your mind can churn a little differently with all those fans on as background noise. My wife likes the white noise, I do not. So this one is simply called Fame. To overcome stifling walls, we fling open the windows at night, anticipating a cooler result. But the summer air is still laden with water, felt rather than seen, forcing us to bring out the Fame. Boxes with cords we scatter haphazard up and down the wall, up and down the hall, through bedrooms, plugged in behind dressers or random light stands, a new racetrack hazard for the cat. I lay between the thinnest of sheets, stare at the distant ceiling, and listen to voices buried in the sand. A radio station broadcasts between the blades. A droning baritone recites blurred headlines, mumbles through the echoed wind, a foreign language that only plastic can create as it whirs through moist air at 80 degrees Fahrenheit. The heat churns through the night along with my conjured background voices lost in the monotone of deep summer unrest and doldrums. I only hope they recite today's scores before I turn off the Fame. Oh, you have to move. Okay. All right. Triggers come from anywhere. And sometimes in my house, triggers come from looking out the window at what's going on the street. And this one involved some folks at the highway department who had decided to upgrade or repair some holes in front of our house in the road in March. And this is called Cooking with Asphalt in March. Take a shovel full of loose asphalt from the back of the truck. Ladle gently across the indentation in the road, being careful not to drip beyond the edge. Fill the fissure to the top of the street surface, tapping mixture gently with the back of your metal spoon as the warm oils cool in the winter air. Check the cake frequently as it hardens to make sure it does not collapse or spread over the container and ruin the pan, leaving crumbs to pick up as others tread and carry oily crumb down the road to stain local foyers. To check if done, drive a nail into the middle. If the nail pulls out clean, it's still a pothole. Okay.
Thank you, David, for those sharply observed poems. And I love your mixture of humor and pathos. We do have time for some questions. If anybody has some to ask, either or both of our authors. Any questions out there? Yes.
When did you start writing poems?
So the question is, when did you start writing poems? I take it goes to both of them.
I was in high school and I wrote really bad poems and didn't tell anybody. And then I wrote some in my 20s, and then life got very busy. And so within the last 15 years, I've returned to learn more about my craft.
I probably wrote some of the same lousy poems that she did in high school. I think I didn't really start until after college. And I still call myself a poet in training. I didn't really, I don't feel I've really learned anything until I started coming here, to be honest. So this is where I cut my teeth on really doing good form and just good writing.
Yes, I hope you take that to the heart. The writer's center is where it all begins. Any other questions? Yeah.
This is an interesting question, I promise you. And by the way, I love both of your poems. There's a book I read that was by an editor of BuzzFeed, and she was talking about how language changes, that there is grammar that we don't need to use anymore, etc. So I noticed that, Dave, when you were writing, I noticed a couple of times you used the word I lay down or I lay that down when it would have been I lie down. And I wondered if you did that intentionally to be modern. I'm curious.
Well, he's a lay poet.
Yeah. But I am curious about that.
When you said that, my wife back there smiled and nodded because she taught English. And she does catch those kind of things, but I wouldn't have thought it at all. I think the bigger risk is with poetry and any writing really is if you write about things that clearly in another 50 years will be anachronistic. They won't, the catchphrases won't have the same meaning. Topic plus language. Language, if you read things from the late 1800s, which was a master class in poetry and form and things like that, some of the language, you've got to wrestle with it.
Well, it's true, but I can't understand half the words my grandchildren.
Yeah.
I find it a fascinating issue. Thank you.
Well, David, I think your poetry is really groovy.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Just a few announcements to wrap up today's session and pretty much the season. There are a few literary events left. On Thursday at 3:30 in the Hall of Philosophy, Nicole Cuffey will speak about her novel Dances. On Friday on this porch, when it will be a little warmer, we have the community reading where selected readers from the workshops of this week will read. Maybe even these people, because they're both taking workshops, will read. With our sister art theater world premiere of Kate Hamill's The Light in the Dark. Your chance to see it before the people in New York see it, New York City, where some of you are perhaps in New York City, so you can see it twice, here and then there. Please consider joining the Friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center even at this late date, because your membership now will carry over to next year if you join this late in the game. If you enjoyed this reading and you want to experience it again, or you want to share it with someone, it will be posted on YouTube. Search for Friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center channel. Be sure to include channel, and you'll see every reading we've had on this board since 2020 when we all went virtual. Remember that? So that's when we had Zoom readings only, and those were recorded, and we've continued to do that with the live one. Let's give our poets a final hand. Hope to see you in our event later this week.